Hey everyone, welcome back to the Official W Show. My name's Michelle, this is Jennie, and we are bringing you all of the WNBA stats, news, updates. You can find it here. But it's an exciting week. So we are in the Commissioner's Cup, which takes place in the month of June. I'll let Jennie touch on that a little more in depth in a little bit, but the standings, the Fever and the Liberty are atop the Eastern Conference standings, and then we have some great games coming up this week though, as those two face off on Saturday, as well as the Aces and the Lynx. The Lynx have that sole top spot in the West, but the Aces and the Storm, the Mercury, surprisingly the Mercury are not far behind. So these next couple weeks, some good basketball is going to shake out, and then we'll find out who is representing each conference in the Commissioner's Cup.
Yeah, so I want to touch on the Commissioner's Cup. $500,000 will be awarded to the winning team, and Coinbase is committing $120,000 for both teams who make it to the finals. The top team from each conference will play in the title game, and that will be played on July 1st, hosted by the team with the best winning percentage in Cup play. So this is an in-season tournament, but obviously a lot of money on the line, and these teams really want to show out for it, and it will be the entire month of June that we're playing in this Commissioner's Cup. Currently, the Liberty are leading the East with a 75-point differential, which is the tiebreaker, with Indiana and Atlanta closely behind, but both of these teams tend to play tight games, which could hurt them in the end. The Dream did have a big 19-point win against the Fever, which does give them a slight edge against the Fever, but you can't be dropping a games against the Sun. They would be sitting 2-0 if they didn't drop that game before the Fever. They will have an opportunity to get some points back, though, against Chicago, so they really need to show up for that game. Every game is important. Point differential is also very important, and we will be touching on the Fever and Liberty matchup on Saturday later in the show. And speaking of great matchups, we had an incredible Western Conference matchup on Wednesday where Seattle finally got a game back on the previously undefeated Lynx. This game might be the game of the year for me so far. If you didn't catch it, go back and watch it. I highly recommend. If I told you the Lynx shot 48% from field goal and three-point range and 90% from the free throw line, who do you think would have won the game? Seattle pulled that game out. They looked so good. I'm really excited to see them play this weekend. Both of those teams sit atop the Western Conference and Cup standings, but Phoenix is at 3-2, the Valkyries are at 2-2, and the Sparks are at 2-2, and they're only trailing behind Phoenix, who have dropped a game to Seattle. Now the Sparks play Minnesota tomorrow, so that game is a must-watch for Cup standings. Can the Sparks show up like they did against the Aces and get production out of their entire starting unit? We can't just be relying on Kelsey Plum in these big games. We need that big game for Murkia. Doesn't need to be 30 points, but we need to see some production throughout their lineup. And they'll play Seattle on Tuesday too. So big games for Cup standings. And they definitely need to win at least one of those in the chase for the Cup. And I know you're going to touch on the Valkyries. They'll play a very strong Seattle team tomorrow, Saturday. Can they continue to show up at home on the West Coast? Will we get a focused Seattle team after such a huge win against the Lynx? We'll have to see.
One team I want to touch on in their recent games are the Golden State Valkyries. I was pretty high on them in our first episode. Apparently so was Vegas, because they set their odds at 9.5 games, and man, I think they're going to be well over that. As I said before, I think they were going to lose some games they should lose, they're going to win some games that they should lose, and they're going to win some games that they're going to win. But these past games against the Aces and Sparks, as head coach Natalie Nakase said, this is who they are, and we saw that on full display against the Las Vegas Aces. A couple things I wanted to point out. I mean, in the second quarter, they outscored them by 19 points. Asia Wilson still went off for 17, Chelsea Gray at 16. Jewel Lloyd, though, a quiet 5. She only took 6 shots. I'm starting to get a little bit worried, just because I think at the beginning it was, okay, let's see how they mesh together. It's going to take some time. They're 7 games in, and I think when the Aces play the Lynx later on this next week, it's going to be pretty telling as to where do you line up against the finals runner-up of last year and really the favorite this year. But for the Valkyries and the Aces, just some stats that really stood out to me. I mean, the Valkyries shot lights out. They were 47% compared to Vegas's 35. They shot 35% from three, but the rebound differential, out rebounded Vegas by 12, which I thought was pretty significant. And then also the assists, Golden State Valkyries have 24 to Vegas's 11. Fast break points, another stat that stands out is 22 Valkyries to 6 fast break points for the Aces. Even though Asia Wilson went off for 17, I thought there were a couple calls that she didn't get that she normally would have, which takes me into the Valkyries traveled to Los Angeles to take on the Sparks. And Kelsey Plum came out after the game and said, look, I'm not getting the calls that I should be getting. I think you're going to see that ebb and flow throughout the WNBA. Some nights she's going to get a lot of calls. Some nights she's not going to get them. I think that's exactly how I thought really it was for Asia Wilson when they played the Valkyries. But the Valkyries are 5th or 6th, I believe 6th in the WNBA in defensive rating. They just swarm you. And a game coming up for them against the Seattle Storm, that's the Seattle Storm's MO as well. So I think that's going to be a very good game on the defensive end. And then even when they play Minnesota too, Minnesota's great defensively. But looking at some of the stats too for the Valkyries and the Sparks, very similar when you look at the Valkyries versus the Aces. They out-rebounded the Sparks by 15. They had 17 offensive rebounds to the Sparks' 6. I mean, that right there could be the difference. The Sparks ended up losing by 8, but it's pretty impressive what the Valkyries are doing in their first year, coming in and really playing bully ball with some of these teams. And that's going to be their identity. I think that's going to be huge for them going forward.
Yeah, I mean, I have something to say about that actually, because Valkyries were the team of the week for me last week. They showed up for both of those games, and going into overtime at LA to look like that just was remarkable, honestly. Like, going into overtime now, the Sparks had a chance to end it in regular time, and I think they definitely should have. They need to have that end of game play ready to go. And then the Aces looked small against the Valkyries. I mean, Asia Wilson was getting doubled and tripled in the paint every single time. There's a big reason why those assists are down, and it's because they couldn't get it to her in the paint. They were turning the ball over way more than the Valkyries were. I don't know what the exact numbers are, but with that too, the Aces scored the least amount of points in the first half that they have all season against the Valkyries. So the Valkyries are here to stay. They have, again, like, we have to talk about that crowd. They have the crowd in the stadium to intimidate the other team, and the Aces just never looked comfortable.
I think Golden State is going to be a destination for top prospects come free agency. I think players are going to, with their new facility, the fans are bought in to play in front of that many people night after night. It's going to be a top destination. Player that I want to highlight this past couple games is Aari McDonald. Holy crap. Due to the Fever's injuries, Indiana signed her to a hardship contract, and let me tell you, she's got some people talking. Who's going to pick her up, right? Because she will be on a roster moving forward. We saw that with Odyssey Sims last year when she was playing incredible for the Dallas Wings. The contract ended, and then she found a home in LA. She's starting point guard. She's playing alongside Kelsey Plum, Dearica Hamby this year. And that is what this opportunity is going to be for McDonald. I mean, just to give you some stats here, she's played 25 minutes against the Sky, 12 points, 3 steals, and in that game, she was plus 19. And then against the Mystics, she was 27 minutes, 5 assists, 3 steals, 7 points, plus 6. If I am the Chicago Sky, I'm calling her agent and I am getting her on the roster. She's playing great, and I hope she lands on a roster for these purposes because she's deserving of it. But Ty Harris is also out for the season for the Dallas Wings, so that could be another potential landing spot too, to take off some of the point guard responsibilities of Paige Becker, slide her into a 2. and have McDonald run the 1. So on Courtney Vandersloot's injury to the sky and what that means, Haley Van Lith, if there is a positive from it all, which there is no positive because it is just a horrific situation that Courtney Vandersloot and the Chicago Sky are going through with her injury. But Haley Van Lith is going to get this experience by just doing now. There is going to be no more on-court mentorship of Sloot leading the pack. And I think that's unfortunate for the Chicago Sky because this young core needs a Courtney Vandersloot. But Haley Van Lith is going to get that experience at a rapid speed that I think is going to benefit her in the long run. But what the Chicago Sky needs right now is a Courtney Vandersloot. So this injury is super impactful to their success. Looking ahead to this weekend's games, so the highly anticipated rematch of the Liberty and the Fever. They are playing in Indiana again. That's where their first game took place. The Liberty came away with a 2-point win. But look, we are in the Commissioner's Cup. So this game means a little bit more. So I'm not going to go into too much depth about the last game when the Liberty came away with the 2-point win. Because I talked about this in one of our previous episodes. Go check it out on YouTube. The biggest thing was the free throws. The Liberty shot 17 more free throws than the Fever. That's the difference of the ball game right there. Both of the teams went on streaky runs. The Liberty outscored the Fever by 8, and then the Fever came back in the third quarter and outscored the Liberty by 17. So it is going to be a game of runs, up and down.
And they're getting Caitlin Clark back, which is obviously a huge bump to their offense. I think they've looked disjointed since she was out. They did have a great win against the Chicago Sky and the Washington Mystics, but even in those games, it just felt like they were out of sync with each other. So having Caitlin back is going to make that team really gel. It's going to get Aaliyah Boston more opportunities. Her scoring has really dropped, and yet her efficiency numbers are incredible. So we have to get her more passes, more opportunities in the paint to actually score because Aaliyah Boston is a huge part of your offense, and I just don't think she's been utilized with the point guards that they've had on the court without Caitlin. So I'm really excited to see them connect again. I think that's going to be huge. And I'm going to take the Fever in this game. I think it's time for an upset. And I think by the end of next week, we don't have any more undefeated teams in the league.
I think all eyeballs are going to be on Saturday's game because it was just so entertaining the first time around. And we're just going to see this battle continue to play out, hopefully for years to come, and hopefully in the playoffs as well. I can't wait. Another game I'm going to be watching is when Seattle travels to Golden State Saturday night. And really why I have my eye on this game is just because of the defensive tenacity both of these teams play with. Valkyries have this young grittiness, you're not going to push us around attitude. And so does the Seattle Storm. You have Skylar Diggins, Alicia Clark, Erica Wheeler, Gabby Williams for your guards. And then, Nneka Ogwumike, Ezzie Magmore. I mean, this is going to be such a great game. And I have the Valkyries in this game. And I more so am just curious to see how they show up against a top tier team. And really, can the Storm compose themselves enough where the Valkyries aren't going to get them rattled? Because what we saw when the Valkyries played the Aces, it was, I believe, a 2-point game at the end of the first quarter. And then the Aces just couldn't score. They couldn't take care of the ball. They were rattled in the second quarter, and they just couldn't get their composure enough to make a comeback. So I think the veteran experience that you see with Seattle, I'm interested to see how they handle that, knowing that is what's coming from the Valkyries. And I think that was a big time win again over the Aces for the Valkyries. So I think they're going into each game with confidence. Lastly, I will be watching the Las Vegas Aces this coming weekend as they host the Phoenix Mercury and then travel to Minnesota on Tuesday. Alyssa Thomas is no longer on the injury report for the Phoenix Mercury. And Phoenix, in my opinion, is performing better than I had them at the beginning of the season, especially with Copper out. Alyssa Thomas, shortly after the season started, went on the injury report, but they've hung in there. Satu Sabli, some of their other players have really got it done on the defensive end, and have done enough to win games that I thought they shouldn't have won. But again, this is just going to be more of a test for Vegas, in my opinion, to see where they're at. They have a slow start. Again, still working to get some pieces moving. I believe against the Valkyries, Jewel Lloyd shot the ball 6 times, Jackie Young shot the ball 9 times. That's just simply not enough when you no longer have Tiffany Hayes, who was 6th Person of the Year last year, and then a 3-and-D in Alicia Clark. I'm seeing how Vegas reacts to all of this, especially when Becky Hammon, after the Valkyries loss, came out and said, our team is soft.
And I love that Becky Hammon did that. I love that she called her team out. That's the kind of coach that Becky Hammon is, and I think her players definitely respond to that. I keep taking the aces. Um, But I think I'm going to do it again. They're playing at home. She has called them out, and they have plenty of footage to go over and improve on. So I think the vets on that team are going to bring it together. I think the Mercury have played w- way above expectations, and I think Satu and Alyssa Thomas might have a triple double in that game, and Satu might drop 30, um, and that might be what it takes to beat the Aces. But I've got the Aces.
It doesn't get any easier after you face Phoenix Mercury. You head to Minnesota, you play the Lynx, and that team is just, they're deep in their bench, and they are going to push you offensively and push you defensively. And it's going to be very interesting to have 2 back-to-back games where you're going to see that defensive toughness that the Mercury and the Lynx are going to bring. I'm not panicking yet with the Aces. However, the lack of depth doesn't go unnoticed. I think it's also difficult when you have Parker Tyus, who is out, as well as Megan Gustafson. There is really no post to help Asia out. You have Elizabeth Kitley. Again, she's in her 2nd year, but really it's her rookie year. She sat out all last year. And then Kia Stokes, what she brings on the defensive end, will never be replaced. However, the offensive side is lacking a little bit in terms of production. But I think that's where your guards need to pick up what's missing. So I'm very interested to see how that plays out. I will take Vegas in that game because I think this is an opportunity to put a statement on one of the top teams. All right, everyone, that concludes our show for this week. If you like what you're hearing and you like joining us each week, please like, subscribe, comment below if you agree, disagree, and what you want to hear more of from us. We enjoy doing this, talking basketball, talking the WNBA specifically, so let us know. All right, see you next week.